right, everyone. Thank you and welcome to another episode of What is Black Podcast. I am so excited that I have like this powerhouse of guests today. So I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves before we talk and get into the episode about Black Joy. So I'll start with Dr. Butler-Barnes.
I'm Sheretta Butler-Barnes. I am an associate professor at Washington University in St. Louis, developmental psychologist and mom of two.
And then Miss Jennifer Thompson.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Thompson. I am a mother of four, a big fan of Jackie and her podcast, and just really excited to be on this panel.
And then, is it Dr. Kellie Carter?
Yes.
Correct.
Hi, I'm Kellie Carter Jackson. I'm a historian and a newly associate professor at Wellesley College in the Department of Africana Studies and a mom of three.
And then Dr. Lynette.
Hi, Lynette Mawhinney. I am Associate Professor of Urban Education at Rutgers University, New York. I'm also the Department Chair of Urban Education, children's book author, and mom of one.
Awesome. Now, before we get started, are you all right if I use first names? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll be like a sister circle. All right. So we'll go first names. Okay. So as I, led into the conversation, the lead into the conversation, I wanted to talk about Black Joy, right? Because I think it's important and vital that not only do we talk about, the trauma of Blackness and Black parenting, but there's also joy in how we live and how we raise our children. But again, very limited for me experiences, hearing from parents and the parenting journey and how do we incorporate Black joy in that journey. So my first question to each of you is to get your perspectives about how do you define Black joy? So I can start with Lynette.
So a couple months ago when you asked me this question, for me, Black joy was around this concept of resiliency, but I've since rethought that, right? Because resiliency is always, it's still coming out of trauma, but Black joy's always been there, right? Since the beginning of time. So in the context of this discussion around parents, for me, Black joy is just being. It's just what it is. It's being together. It's being who you are. And embracing all the greatness.
All right. Kellie, your thoughts?
No, I don't know. I kind of look at joy like from a biblical sense, because I feel like oftentimes the word joy was introduced to me in church. And so when I think of like happiness, I think of it as something that's like a happenstance. It's fleeting, it comes, it goes. But joy to me is a constant, and joy is almost in direct conversation with trauma or suffering or pain. And joy is the thing that allows you to push past that or see the other side of that. And so I think to be Black in America is really difficult to say the least. But joy is that sustaining, almost spiritual like aspect in my life that allows me to be able to find moments of peace and laughter and respite in ways that can't always be found through like the temporality of happiness. Joy is just really sustaining to me and very spiritual to me.
And Jennifer, your take on what is Black joy to you?
For me, Black joy is the inner light that I feel that we all possess, that God's inner light, and then that shining of that light through all the spaces that we're in, whether it's shining it with the sun or shining through the rain or shining with each other in expression of love and in family, in sisterhood. And then also that just that drive inside of us and that light, that strong light to shine even in spaces where we're not traditionally or historically accepted. Mm-hmm. And just, that we're going to shine even if, things are around us, aren't great. We're shining still. That's that joy for me. And that we still laugh. We can still giggle, still have fun. We still we know still we love, and no matter what. That's what it is for me.
And then Sheretta, your take.
I absolutely love all these definitions, but one of the things that I think about with Black joy is just this act of resistance, right? It's acknowledging the trauma, but it's still sort of resisting that. And for me, it's being radical in my parenting, informing my kids about the plights of Black Americans, but also resisting these stereotypes and messages and just being their authentic selves. So it's always there, like the others have stated, but I feel like it's an act of resistance when we are joyful and happy and we can express ourselves, and we can do it for the culture, and we can, so I feel like it's an act of resistance.
So again, like Sheretta, I love all your all's definitions of Black joy. But the one thing that really, really sticks out to me is this idea that we have to have this something, right, in order to, like you said, either buttress or resist the negativity. And sometimes I wonder, like, okay, so if we didn't have racism, if we didn't have all these isms, right, white supremacy, would there even be a need for this concept of Black joy, right? So if, let's say you dismantled all of that, what does that leave us? Like, do we still have that joy? Do we still have this need for how we define Black joy, or does it just become joy? So I'm just wondering, it's just very interesting to me that for everything that has happened historically, as a people in the diaspora, I think we always find a way to hold ourselves, to still ourselves, right? But it's like there's this need to do this. I think it's important. Joy, I think, is always important, but at the same time, it's like I just find it interesting that despite everything, we have to find ways to fight back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it's funny. Like when I think if you were to like eradicate white supremacy, I think there would still be joy because parenting is hard. Like parenting is really, really hard and so universal. But like, I mean, I think of how my kids are small now, and I'm in the trenches. I'm in these it's parenting right now is very labor intensive. It's very physical. And so when I like account for all equal factors, for me, there is the ability to still see joy or find joy in rest, because I'm chronically tired, or like in laughter when my kids are giggling. Like there's something about removing all other aspects that parenting, the hard work of parenting allows you to be able to find these pockets of joy as well. That reminds you how good and wonderful it is to be a parent despite the difficulties.
And just to piggyback off of that, I absolutely agree. And I think that if we eradicated white supremacy, because I'm the mother of two girls, I want to let them know how to love themselves, how to appear, how to show up. Because the eradication of white supremacy, I'm still thinking about the gendered lens and what it's like even being a Black girl in spaces where we are compared to white femininity standards. And so it still is this idea of being joyful, of loving yourself and being radical and showing up as who you are.
I totally agree. And I was thinking when I was looking at your questions, what would it be like if we didn't have to always resist? And the thought back to what our history is, and if we're coming from royalty or coming from godlike space, why? Of course, I think we were joyful then. We can be joyful when there's no problem. We can be joyful just because we're joyful beings. And, it definitely, it plays into everything that we experience on a regular basis. So yeah, I wish we could eradicate all of that. I think it will come one day and we'll still be joyful.
Mm-hmm.
So Kellie, you touched a little bit about how you experience joy, right? Mm-hmm. Aside from all these other layers of our individualities, right? Who we are, how we show up as people. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. How does joy show up in either your life, your work, your family, in the spaces that you exist?
this is gonna sound maybe superficial, but it's the simple things. It's good weather. like I spent a lot of time in Texas, and now I live in New England, and like a sunny day that's not cold, where I can be out with my kids, where I can run around, like that brings me so much joy. When I have rest and I'm not parenting from a place of exhaustion, that brings me so much joy. Just to discover things like now, it's so easy, I think, to get caught up in work and the things that have to be done. But how my kids are sort of finding themselves in the world and seeing things for the first time, like certain animals, or going to the beach, or, just having new experiences, seeing a butterfly. Like, to them, they're so excited by the little things that we take for granted often. I just find so much pleasure in that. So watching cartoons again, like, it doesn't really have to be, joy to me is not, monetary. It's not $1 million. It's quality time, it's intimacy. And it's just those special moments that really don't require a whole lot, but just they feel easy. And I like it when life feels easy.
See, it's interesting that which your last portion invoked in me that song "Easy Like Sunday Morning." Mm-hmm. So yeah. So
it's true.
Yeah. So Lynette, you have any?
I agree with all that Kellie just said, especially when it comes to joy in like my life and my family. But I'm stuck on thinking about this concept of, joy at work, right? So I work in higher ed. It's the ivory tower. It is, dominated by white men, and it is not made for any person of color. And so for many years, the places that I worked, I had to find joy outside of that, right? To fill me up to then go back into the space. But at my job now, it's really the first time where there's joy in the actual job. And truthfully, it's because I have a Black female dean, and my whole team is basically Black females. And so it's kind of like, if you've ever seen Black Lady Sketch Show, with their whole sketch with the Black Lady courtroom, right? Yeah. Where all the women go into this courtroom and they're like, this is the unprecedented moment. I kind of am working in an unprecedented space right now. And so although I've always found joy in the work I do, and I'm finding it outside to bring it in, this is the first time, because of this very, very, very unique space, that we're having like joy like at work, because it's all, Black women who understand each other. We want to bring joy into the space and what it's like. And we just laugh and have fun and, yet are doing creative and amazing work, because we're being supported to be able to do that. And we're being seen and we're being appreciated. So, so for me, joy at work, this is the first time where it's really made this switch, because I'm at this place that's so unique, yet so amazing. It's filling me up in different ways.
Wait, Sheretta?
And so I'm going to sort of combine what Kellie and Lynette talked about. And so for me, Black joy is the simple, everyday things in terms of like the parenting aspect, but also my work too. And so for me, it's knowing that my girls see me writing about Black girls and going against some of these narratives brings joy to me in a space that, despite all of these things, I can do this. So it's not so much me caring about the institution, because they would, it's an institution, right? It's typical PWI, white man in these spaces. But knowing that I can have a conversation with my 14-year-old about things that are going on, but she sees her mom doing this amazing work on Black girls and how we sort of have to persevere, acknowledging that gives me joy in itself, to be in this space that I can have these conversations with her, that I can influence her to also be radical and to share that with others. That to me is Black joy, something so simple that I would never thought that I get this heartwarming feeling. Like, she came to me for an assignment, like, I saw some with Black girls and I feel like they're being disciplined more in school. And I'm looking at her trying to get excited, and she's like, please don't get excited. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm excited, right? So that just brought me joy that she was able to see that, to acknowledge that this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to take. So for me, that's like my joy with the work and the little simple things. And then just letting them, I just want to see them happy, right? And I think that's really what Kellie's talking about. Just to be able to be Black and free. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Jennifer, your thoughts?
Oh, I love how you said, Sheretta, being Black and free. And my husband and I have made like a concerted effort to make sure we're raising our kids that way. So we're homeschooling them and just allowing them not to have to feel like they have to do anything because, you know, like the establishment said, the institution said, anybody in particular said. And of course, they have to, you know, obviously be mannerly and polite and things like that. But just allowing them to be who they are and without like the constraints of what public school says they're supposed to be or what any other, you know, institution says they're supposed to be. So then, and it's showing them through how we love ourselves, how to love themselves, how to just say, you know, not celebrate on a specific holiday, but just celebrate because it's Tuesday and I feel like I need a break, to just go to the beach on any given day, just because we just need to have our feet in the sand and look at the horizon and feel that joy and feel that peace. So then, you know, I can start to see them take time for themselves to celebrate amongst themselves and to feel that joy in any space they're in and what they're learning and what they want to learn. You know, expressing that joy to their friends and showing that their friends that taking care of yourself is important. Self-care is joyful. And then just like the other ladies have said, everyday joys in the sunshine, in the rain, and just loving yourself and feeling like the joys of the ancestors, remembering family members, seeing the joy and seeing qualities in family members that they possess and allowing and having that freedom to show who they really are. And I don't know, I just feel like it's a wonderful thing to just see kids come up without any constraints and see who they're really going to be. And I can just see that joy every day, as I'm sure you all can. And I was thinking about in the workspace, and I work in corporate, and of course, it's just like any other typically male-dominated, white male-dominated space. And just being on a meeting and feeling like no one understands you, they're not listening. And then you get a little ping and a message from a sister friend, like, I hear you. It's okay. We're going to be fine. And not from a place of, oh, poor us or anything like that, but more so, you know, like, I got you. It's strength. It's sisterhood and it's love. And then, you know, just a little giggle or an emoji, and then we can laugh, you know, privately. And it's okay. It's not so oppressive. It's okay. It's going to be fine. And we're going to be great.
So there are two things that came up for me in the answer to the questions that you all share. And thank you again for sharing those answers, like wonderful answers. I have goosebumps, right, for those answers. One thing that came up for me was, you know, the idea of modeling for our kids what Black joy is. And so the question that came up to my mind was, do you actually use those terms, Black joy, in your family, or those expressions, whether it be books or anything, like any kind of medium that you use? And then secondly, following up what Jennifer was saying, and also Lynette was saying, you know, in terms of your workspace or outside of being a parent, right? How are you creating networks so that you can, you know, these sister networks, friends, relationships, right? So that you can have this respite. You have some place to go and someone to talk to recharge. I don't know if we wanted to tackle first this issue of if you really do you use the term Black joy? Do your kids know what? I mean, you may have little kids, so I may not know yet, but I'm just wondering, do you think you would use that term, or do they know that term?
I use all kinds of affirmations. So like my love language, for those who've done love language, is words of affirmation. So I'm constantly telling my children, you are Black, you are beautiful. Look at your skin tone. It's like chocolate. You are so sweet. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You know, I tell them this all the time. They probably get sick of it, but like, I affirm it for them also in like everything that we read. So my kids are like 7 and under. So every picture book that we read looks like them. It's either a Black boy or a Black girl or a child of color, because we like to keep it diverse. And like, but I want them to see themselves operating in their imaginations so that when they think of princesses, they don't imagine a blonde, blue-eyed girl. They think of themselves. When they think of astronauts, they think of themselves. So I'm constantly trying to reinforce the images that they see, not just the words that they hear, but like how they internalize how wonderful and good and great it is to be Black. That for me is really important. You know, I use Imani Perry's quote all the time, but it's true. She's like, being Black is great. Racism sucks. Like white supremacy is awful, but being Black is so awesome. And so I want them to know that the problem is not their Blackness. The problem is white supremacy. Being Black is their strength. And they hear that from me every single day.
So I'll open it to anyone who wants to, if you have anything else you wanted to add regarding that topic.
I'll go along with Kelly. I have a young one, so she's 9 months, so I have no idea what she understands what we're saying. But you know, words of affirmation are also, it's just big for me in my love language and touch, right? So that is big, like saying all the positivity. I don't think we use the term actually Black joy, but we are constantly affirming, not only for her in her Blackness and what that, and all the greatness that comes with it, but also as a woman, or in this case, a little girl. You know, my girl got some beautiful curves at 9 months, but literally we've had a couple strangers body shame her, you know, and I'm like, really, we're starting that now? No. So even just affirming, you know, her beauty, you know, and her body, and loving the skin that she's in, because that for me on a personal note has just been, there's 4 generations of women hating their bodies. And I'm like, it's got to stop here. It has to stop. So, and so finding joy in literally like who she is as a human being, as a person, and all her hilariousness. But again, I don't know what she's getting in yet. I'll know in a few months.
So I'll just jump in because I have like a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, both girls. And so for me, I don't use the term Black joy as much as I use like be a free Black girl magic, love yourself. And I work so hard to affirm their identities, even in spaces of, you know, when I enrolled them in dance, when it's girls that did not look like them, whose shapes were not like them. So I purposefully, intentionally put them in Catherine Dunham Children's Center, where they saw folks that look like them, where it was a sisterhood, where it's daily affirmations. You know, their name is me and Imani, faith and purpose. So I tell them that all the time. And so it is constantly every day. And what's interesting is that across the developmental span, because Lynette, you made me think of just when they were little babies, it changes, but that's something that's very constant. Like you have to consistently do it because they're in these different developmental stages, and the media tells them so much about who they are sometimes, and we have to consistently counter that. And so I think now I'll start using like Black joy just to see my teenagers' reaction to that. But yeah, and so it's through these other sort of daily affirmations as well. Yeah. So good point, Kelly, Lynette. Good point.
And Jennifer, I don't know if you wanted to jump in.
Sure. Yeah, with my kids, I don't use the term Black joy, but I think now maybe I will. We do say Black boy joy from the book, from the storybook Black boy joy. But yeah, I think just through all everyday education that we give them and everyday affirmations that we give, I feel like they know how special they are, how important they are, and royal and amazing. And I'm just really, I'm touched by the fact that I can see them process when they see the news stories and they see the social media, and how they can kind of like try to negotiate that in their brain about like, well, I'm hearing all these messages from my parents about we're royal, we're great, we're the best, but I'm hearing all these other different messages in the media. And it's good to see that they come out on the side of, well, that's just the media. Who knows who's running them? I know what's inside of me. And I just feel like it is a constant, everyday, concerted effort to share that with them so that they can internalize it, and it just becomes part of their regular narrative as far as who they are. And it wasn't easy at first because they kind of were getting different sort of messages at a younger age. Now they're age 6 through 13. And I just kind of see it solidifying. I feel like maybe being that they're more protected, maybe in our home, that they don't get too many different messages from too many different types of people. But I just love that I see that joy in them, and I do think it's constant, and it's very important to always combat what they might come up against, because it's especially as they're getting older and they have access to their own technology, and so I can constantly monitor what they're seeing in the news stories, or negative comments on posts and things like that. But yeah, it's a concerted effort every day, but I find joy in that too. So
can I ask a question?
A privilege to do that.
Since this is a sister circle, for basically everyone in here who has kids who are older, our kids are growing up in a world that we didn't have, right? Especially with social media and just how the world is a little bit louder than what we had. So what are some things that you all do, knowing that like the world is different and with social media, to also kind of maintain the joy for the kids?
So I have a 19 and a 22-year-old. So what I did early, they got cell phones later. So they got cell phones. One was in 9th grade, and the other one, maybe halfway through 8th grade, got a phone. And also monitoring, limiting what social media outlets they had. Also, I think was important. And then I think, like all of you are doing, having conversations early about affirming, affirmations, and even not even vocal stuff. I had artwork in the house, family member. So those are some things that I did that weren't specifically social media, but in a way, I think just parenting in general, right? You just want to make sure whatever you're exposing your kids to align with your values, but also understanding that it's a tool, that they need to, and there are benefits to the tools, but there are also still opportunities that you as a parent still have some, I'm not going to say control, but influence for them. But I don't know how others feel, with different stages of parenting.
No, I think it's absolutely right on. I think for me, my kiddos got their, phones later on. I must admit the 10-year-old got hers a little bit earlier than what the oldest would have, and she'll never let me forget it. But never let me forget it. But the thing is, though, I monitor what they're on, but very mindful, knowing that they have friends who may show them things and who may use social media differently, where, it's times where she came back and had a conversation about something she saw where we watched it together and we sort of talked about it and why I felt like she wasn't developmentally ready to sort of view something like that. Or maybe I thought she was too young for a conversation, but she was ready to have the conversation, particularly around when Mike Brown happened here in Missouri. So she was in 5th grade at the time, and really to process and talk about why we saw businesses and people out. And so that was very important. So at that time, I was like, listen, okay, this is what we're going to do, A, B, C, and D. But it definitely is monitoring, but it's something that I don't take away from them, because I know that if if they don't get it, they have peers around them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'll be real quick. I just, my kids are still young. So they're not on social media, but like they are on YouTube. Like they are on, like they have found, because of the pandemic, the lack of the screen time that everybody was like so protective of is like, here, take a Kindle, here. So they have gotten a lot more screen time than they normally would have because of the pandemic. But because of that, it's also like compelled me to be a little bit more cautious, because my daughter is obsessed with Disney and obsessed with princesses. And I realized that like she, at as early as 3, was like, I don't like my hair. I want Elsa hair. I want Anna's hair from Frozen. And I was like, their hair is ugly. And that may sound harsh, but like I was like, their hair is ugly. They want your hair. And then I had my friend who's a hairstylist like call her and leave a voice note. And she's like, Jojo, your hair is beautiful. Everyone wants your hair. Your hair's gorgeous. Like, but there's a lot of like, things that I can't let her watch repeatedly. So if we watch Cinderella now on Netflix, it's the Brandy version. So she watches the Whitney Houston Brandy version, and that's the Cinderella she knows. So there's a lot of like curating of choice where I give them options to make them feel empowered, but I'm picking the choices, So I'm like, okay, it's Moana or Brandy's like Brandy Cinderella. So she's still getting women of color or girls of color, but she's not inundated with Elsa and Anna and Tangled and all of these, white princesses that cause her to doubt how she sees herself. But I've definitely had to monitor, even with my son, even with superheroes, we've had to like talk about who superheroes can be and what they look like.
And I was just going to say, my oldest is 13, and he just recently got access to an iPad for the past few years, I guess I would say, where he had a social media account this past year. And I have just noticed that it's all these, stories inundated with issues and all the horror stories that we all see all the time. Even though he's not subscribed to accounts where I will typically post those kinds of stories, it just shows me that it's just prevalent. It's just throughout all spaces. So even if he's following NBA, of course, NBA players are making comments about stories and comments about the news. If he's on some car site, they're making comments about it, just because it's all throughout every fabric of everything that we're doing. But I took the opportunity to turn it into a learning experience anytime he sees that. And I guess because he was raised to know that if he sees things he doesn't understand, if he sees things that are upsetting, he just doesn't know what it is, he needs to bring it to us, to his parents. And then we can use that as a teaching time. And, I was concerned a little bit when within the pandemic, all the kids from 6 through 13 would spend a lot of time together. So then we had the 6-year-old and the 9-year-old all seeing the stories too. And then they, getting kind of like emotional reactions to it. But it still was another opportunity to let them know that, yeah, we're going to experience these things, but, here's the background behind it. And here's why it's happening. And it's not anything to do with you. It's these other evils out there. And then, it kind of opened my eyes to, I need to be more protective of what he's seeing on the social media. So monitor the accounts that he's seeing, and then just let him know, keep on telling me when you come upon these things, because it's not just going to be, like racially charged stories, anything that just might be not age appropriate that we need to talk about. So yeah, it's like everything else with parenting, it's a constant everyday thing. And, it was scary, but, to a certain point, you have to let the children, venture out and learn, because they're going to experience these things on their own one day, and we need to prepare them. Can't always be so protective, but just constantly monitoring and constantly checking in. And then just for us, it's like some others said, having, like, we have my daughter's room. We have Jackie's book on the nightstand, even though it's already been read. but just to let them know this is normal. This is normal. Black authors, beautiful Black children on the covers of books that we didn't necessarily see. I know I didn't when I was young, and just throughout everything, artwork, the shows we watch, just through all the spaces. Keep that normalizing that we're in all spaces and we're great in all the spaces.
So I just wanted to touch on one topic. So we talked about, and then Sheretta mentioned this idea of, and it's also out there that Black joy is a form of resistance. But then you also Sheretta mentioned about liberation. So I'm wondering your thoughts based on all our conversations, if maybe we should change the framework a little bit. Instead of Black joy is resistance, it's liberation.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think so, because it's being very intentional about deciding to be your authentic self, to be happy and Black, to understand you're not negating those experiences, but you're choosing to live and resist those every day by celebrating who you are, how you show, how you present yourself, what you stand up for. I think it is liberatory in some sense. I didn't think about it like that, but it really is. Yeah. I like that. I have to think a little bit more on processing.
I like that too. I like that too. It's liberatory. Yeah. It can be both. It's resistance and through that resistance, liberation comes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I find myself happier in being able to be my authentic self and talking about Black joy with my girls and doing this work through my job, right? So it is resisting, but it's also liberatory as well. It could be both. Yeah.
I love that concept of liberation through resistance. And when we teach our kids, yes, if you want to go to the beach, you're going to the beach. If you want to, just in the middle of the street, start singing and, just draw wonderful chalk drawings, express your joy, whatever way you want to express your joy. And it's like demanding that. I almost demand that they express it. Don't ever let anybody, shush it or put it down, or because you're in spaces where others may be uncomfortable. That doesn't have anything to do with you. You still express your joy the way you need to, and let others get used to that. Mm-hmm. Either if they're not there, whoever's around, you be you, and you love that you're you, and you express that, whatever way that means for you.
I love that. Do you, be you, love you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's all a journey that we still do as adults, right? Mm-hmm. Even in our jobs and how we show up, just to do that. I think that's liberatory in itself.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I know that there have been times that I had to step out of myself and just be brave to show them how to express it. And because I thought, well, how are they going to know? And, of course, I learned from others. And, I looked at my husband like, are you going to do it too? Of course, he's leading and doing the same thing. And just but it took us to have to say, we're going to make a concerted effort to show them what that means to love yourself. And sometimes it took bravery. It takes bravery in certain spaces when okay, I should probably just be quiet in here, but no, we're not going to. We're purposely not going to.
I mean, I think we're seeing that now with Naomi Osaka, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
To keep my joy and to keep my health, I can't do those media things. So,
period. I mean, that's just it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. Period. It. And if you're going to go ahead and fine me $15,000 because I won't do that, then fine.
So
I'm
be
not going to be in this French Open because I need to keep my joy and my health. And
I have my talent.
Yes.
And I can pay the fee.
Yes.
So this is just what I'm going to do at this moment. I love it. I think it's this idea of not only teaching but modeling it too. I love it. I think.
Yeah. Because we can't give it to our children if we don't have it ourselves.
That's it.
I can't tell my daughter to love herself if I don't love myself. So, I mean, it has to be, you know, like when you get in the airplane and they're like, put the
oxygen mask
first.
Well, you have to secure yourself first before you help others. What you don't do if you don't have it, right?
Exactly.
So,
I think that's how it works.
Yeah.
All right, ladies, this has been a wonderful conversation. And before we head out, if you want to share any projects or how people can learn more about you so you can spread more Black joy, especially I know I forgot to ask you, Kellie, about your recent article about, you know, we talked about media a little bit. So you can even share that if you want to. And it has been a pleasure. You all have brought me joy today by joining me in this conversation. So please, Lynette, do you want to start?
Sure. People can find me at LynetteMawhinney.com. Also, I have a children's book, Lulu, the One and Only, which really talks about self-love through racial identity. And I also have a new edited book out called Strong Black Girls, Reclaiming Schools in Their Own Image. So please go ahead and check that out too.
All right. And we'll go to Miss Kellie.
So I recently had an op-ed in the New York Times about Black joy. I wrote about the new show Run the World on Stars, which is sort of being dubbed as the Black Sex in the City. I push back on that idea, but it's just such a joyful show. It's such a joyful, it's so fun. And so I just love seeing Black sisterhood. I actually write about violence. My first book was all about Black abolitionists and violence. And in my next book, I'm also writing about violence, but there's a chapter called Joyful Violence, and it's basically how we use joy as a weapon against white supremacy. So I'm still writing about these things. I think they're in conversation with each other, that we can talk about, again, resistance and liberation as part of a singular process.
Great. And Sheretta?
So I am just writing as a scholar right now, but I recently did an interview for USA Today about the importance of remote learning and how Black children's identities have been affirmed while they are at home because they don't have to deal with the racist environment of school settings and being always challenged.
Awesome. And Jennifer?
I don't have any particular projects that I'm working on right now. I am pursuing a degree at the time, so it's taking up all of my time. But if you guys want to reach out to me, I'm at JLT Digital on Instagram.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Nice meeting everybody.
Nice meeting you.
And to you. Take care. Have a great one.
Thank you all for joining us for this important episode of What is Black podcast. Well, I think it's important because we talk about all things of Black joy and the importance that it plays for us as parents raising Black children. And especially I want to thank our guests, Dr. Kellie Carter Jackson, Dr. Lynette Mawhinney, Dr. Sheretta Butler-Barnes, and Jennifer Thompson for joining us today and for them sharing their joy and their experiences as parents and modeling Black joy for their children. I love this conversation. And to learn more about these wonderful people, please check out our website, whatisblack.co, where I'll have links to their social media handles, as well as some of the reference papers and op-eds that they've written and interviews they've written so you can learn more about them. And also, please, to stay up to date with us and learn more about What is Black, please sign up for our newsletter. And you can sign up for the newsletter at whatisblack.co as well. So thank you so much. And until next time, we have one more episode to go before we end the season. And I think it's been a great season so far. And our 10th episode closing out season 3, I want to do a recap of our guests and their thoughts about how we can reimagine a better world for Black children. Until next time.